This is Dr. David D. Schein for the special episode of Saving America with our new weekly update. Here's some of the top stories from the last week. Israel rescues 4 live hostages. That's pretty good news. Unfortunately, there are reportedly 120 hostages left. Sadly, the report is that 43 of those 120 hostages are already dead. I'm not sure why we define hostages if they're already dead, but in any event, that's the sad world we live in. Now, Hamas claims that 274 people were killed in Gaza during the Israeli raid. Now, first of all, we don't trust Hamas to tell us whether it's day or night. But one of the things is that if they had not committed the atrocities on October 7th, then none of this would ever have happened. There wouldn't be hostages that needed to be rescued, right, folks? And remember, there were 1,200 people brutally murdered on October 7th. So no sympathy at all for these bogus reports from Hamas. Obviously, a fraudulent attempt to get sympathy from the wackos out in the world wandering around. Particularly sad note, some of the hostages were rescued from the home of an Al Jazeera journalist. Think about that for a minute. Al Jazeera journalist, home, hostages rescued from their home. Yeah, folks, this is some nasty stuff going on. And certainly I am not sympathetic to any of the protests in favor of Hamas, that is for sure. Another story from this week, Trump possible juror misconduct. Now, juror misconduct is a classic reason to call a mistrial, which would start the entire process all over again if the prosecution has the energy or the desire to do it all over again. In this case, it was a Facebook report by someone who claimed to be a relative of a juror who commented that the jurors had already made a decision to convict Trump or something to that effect. The report came from the wacko justice in charge of this, Mershon, who, clown that he is, had to say to the parties, hey, you know what? There may be a pretty big problem. So that's being investigated presently. Who knows how that's going to come about. Speaking of trials, Hunter Biden out in Delaware was found guilty on 3 felony counts. This is the first time that the child of a sitting president has had to face federal trial. And of course, therefore, the first time some of them could have been convicted. The allegations were that he bought a gun while he was an addict. He filled in a federally required form claiming that he was not an addict. Now, as they say, payback is hell, and it comes in multiple flavors here. First, major evidence against Hunter was his famous laptop. Yeah, that's the one the FBI and the slopstream media said was Russian disinformation. Second, from the sounds of things, Hunter was a lousy husband and boyfriend. His exes testified to his crack habit at one point was every 20 minutes he needed to hit his crack pipe. This is a pretty awful situation. And interesting that in that apparently extended time period that he was actively using crack, that he was never arrested for possessing illegal drugs. The jury deliberated only 4 hours to find him guilty of all 3 felonies. The sad part here is that the major crimes of selling his father's name for big money to foreign governments was not prosecuted, at least not yet. In my opinion, he's likely to get some probation with required periodic drug testing. There's still a tax case that reported will be starting at some point here soon. I'm not holding my breath on that or on the results. Next story is surprising May jobs report. The big headline is 272,000 new jobs filled, and this was far in excess of the predicted 190,000 jobs, which still would have been a pretty healthy number. Well, as we do here in Saving America, we look behind the statistics. Part of that number is the government added 41,000 of those jobs. Further, many of the jobs were in healthcare, which we all know is heavily government subsidized, if not in nonprofit institutions. And that's a reflection of our aging population as well. Many of the jobs that were remaining were low-paid retail and fast food jobs. We also do not know how many of these jobs went to people who are here illegally and are not legally allowed to work. I know for a fact in the greater Houston area, there are a number of restaurant workers who are not here legally, and also people in other fields like janitorial services who are not in the United States legally. So the question is, how much good did the hiring actually do for America? And my commentary there is not very much. And I know crazy Biden will run around bragging about this number, but believe me, it is not a number worth bragging about. And I noticed that the slopstream media did not bother to give the breakdown that I just gave you about what's really happening with these job numbers. Now, interestingly, the stock market slumped on the news, and that ties in with a parallel report that inflation was also higher than expected for May at 3.3% over a year earlier. Now, remember, many Americans are expecting prices to decline. Hey, guess what, folks? Inflation is continuing, and even the Fed's only trying to get it down to a 2% per annum increase, which means starting from whatever you're paying today, if you're paying $5 for something that you paid $3.50 for a few years ago, you're not going to get back to $3.50. You're not going to get back to $5. You just might be paying $5.20 instead of $5.50 next year. See how that works? Yeah. So inflation's a tough number, but the Fed is still trying to help out old Biden. They don't have much to go on, but they're still saying, well, there might be a reduction in the federal funds rate at least once this year and maybe 4 times next year. Folks, as I've said momentarily ago, I'm not holding my breath. Now, more stupid government news. It's no secret I consider the U.S. Postal Service the poster child for a failed U.S. government bureaucracy. Now, the USPS clowns are claiming that it is us Americans who need to have bigger mailboxes so the scum won't steal our packages. Folks, how big a mailbox would we all need to have? What about some of those cases of things that are being delivered? Yeah, you need a pretty big mailbox for that, or you'd need a front porch with a lock that the postal guy has. Yeah, this is not an easy situation. How dumb are these suggestions? Why not take responsibility for things? There's a interview, I found a piece of an interview from former Houston Police Captain Greg Furman. He said, this is why they have the U.S. Postal Police. This is their job to investigate mail theft. And that sends the wrong message, he says. There is no deterrence when you start having new policies and procedures like that. You simply embolden more criminals. Yes, folks. The answer, of course, comes from Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis just signed recently a state law that you get caught stealing twice in a year. The hammer comes down hard with felony prosecutions for porch theft. We need to prosecute small crimes so that the petty criminals do not become felons and murderers. This is not complicated. Encourage the performance that you want, punish the performance that you do not want. Make sure, you voters out there, that no Soros prosecutor is reelected in this election cycle. Let's get back to tough on crime and save our society. And in particular, let's discourage those who are on the borderline between committing crime and not. Let's let them know crime does not pay, because presently, unfortunately, it does. The National Rifle Association scores a 9-0 victory over the head of New York State finances in the U.S. Supreme Court. Folks, I love this story. A key administrator in New York State tried to hurt the National Rifle Association by manipulating financial institutions. The NRA, which has many problems, at least won this round. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0, that's right, including all three liberal justices, that the administration's actions violated the First Amendment rights of the NRA. In light of this and the two recent verdicts against Trump, and not counting taxes, tolls, etc., I recommend that no rational business person locate a business in New York State. Further, with the announcement of a new stock exchange in Texas, it is time for even businesses that are totally associated with New York City to consider a move to more favorable locations, generally across the Great South and Southwest. The European Union begins to lean right. French President Macron is in a major panic, and I love it, folks. Elections across Europe resulted in a surge of support for conservative candidates, sparking a snap election in France. Much of the push here was due to the fraud of climate change being forced on the population. That costs them money, costs them opportunities, increases their energy cost. Plus, the horrendous impact of unwelcome immigration. And of course, the United States has experienced that in droves, so we can commiserate with our colleagues in the European Union. In France, Marine Le Pen's national rally outpolled Macron's party 2-1. Yeah, folks, over 30% to about 15% for Macron. Similar results for conservatives are reported in Germany and Italy. This should be a message to the Dems here in the USA. You can't fool all of the people all of the time. Elon Musk has been sued by 8 former employees of the now pretty famous company SpaceX, as it shoots rockets off into space. Part of this is a very serious situation, folks. First, I'm a strong supporter of equal opportunity for all, women, minorities, the disabled. We need to give everyone who's willing to work an opportunity to work, and they need to be free of harassment. My training focuses on keeping workers happy, because happy workers are productive workers. Workers who are feeling harassed are not productive because they're not happy. And it's not complicated. You're wasting your money paying salary if you're not treating your employees well on top of it. And study after study has shown that the conditions of work are more important to motivation for employees than pay. Yes, get that one, folks. Out in Silicon Valley, these tech companies or new companies are saying, you know, we're the really new guys. We've got really cool new stuff going on here. We don't need to worry about those old EEO policies and affirmative action and all that. And interestingly, because they are not focused on doing things that a lot of traditional businesses, like many that I work with, they are not taking care of business. They're not taking care of their female and minority employees in the way that they ought to be doing. And so what has happened here is that Musk is the target. He does say a lot of weird things on social media. He's been disciplined by the Securities and Exchange Commission for saying improper things. One of the reasons he went through with his purchase of Twitter a couple years ago is that he had said some things publicly that he was committed to, and he had to either pay some huge penalties or go ahead and buy the company. So what has happened is that these employees have cited some of these not politically correct comments. And this rolls back to a letter that was sent to him about 2 years ago, signed by 400 employees of SpaceX, claiming that the atmosphere there is not a good one for employees. And that's a serious concern. 400 is a very significant number. Reportedly, tied to this lawsuit, 8 employees who signed the letter were fired. This discrimination case is on the heels of a pending National Relation Board investigation related to the same 400 signature letter, because that's considered collective action. That's what triggered the NLRB. So that's not been resolved yet either. So this is an important thing. I want to note that I do feel that Musk, as a private citizen, can say what he wants in social media under the protection of the First Amendment. That is, as long as that is separate from how he runs these companies. My recommendation, not that he's asked me recently, would be for Musk to do what other entrepreneurs do, hire pros to run his companies, and he can run around and raise capital and be creative, but I think he should stay out of the day-to-day operations of his businesses. And I think everybody out there, including him and including his stockholders, which includes yours truly, would be a little happier. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America from the Claremont Management Group studios in the historic Houston Heights. We welcome your feedback, of course, especially on our new concept here. And please keep in mind, we are seeking sponsors and advertisers. Please feel free to recommend us to others who might want to sponsor a positive American show. And of course, please subscribe on your favorite platform.